I found the pumpkin at the corner stand on Willow Lane, the one where the old man never smiles but always gives you an extra apple for luck. It wasn't like the other pumpkins stacked in messy orange towers. This one was sitting a little apart, round and smooth, the color of faded sunlight instead of the usual bright orange. The kind of pumpkin that feels like it's waiting for someone specific to notice it. The old man didn't say much when I picked it up. He just looked at me for a second too long, his eyes gray and glassy, like wet gravel, and muttered, "Be sure you treat it kindly." I laughed, awkward, thinking he was joking, but his face didn't move. No smile, no blink. He just slipped the pumpkin into a brown paper bag and handed me that extra apple. By the time I got home, the air had turned sharp. Mom was already asleep on the couch, the TV humming some late-night sitcom. I carried the pumpkin to the kitchen table, the wood cool under my elbows, and set up my little carving kit, the cheap one from the dollar store with plastic handles that bend if you press too hard. I drew the face first, uneven triangle eyes, a too big grin with crooked teeth. I wanted it to look goofy, not scary. The first cut was harder than I thought. The knife squealed against the skin before sinking in. When I lifted the lid, that smell hit me. Sweet, damp, like rain-soaked leaves mixed with something faintly sour. I dug in with both hands, scooping out the slick, stringy guts. The seeds stuck to my palms like tiny pearls. And that's when I felt something dry against my fingers. At first, I thought it was a piece of stem, but when I pulled it free, I realized it was paper, folded small, almost perfectly square. My hands were slippery, so it nearly fell apart as I unfolded it. The paper was yellowed, edges soft like it had been inside for years. "Don't blow out the candle before midnight." That's all it said. No handwriting I could recognize. The letters were thin and careful, almost like they'd been printed with a trembling hand. I waited for the punchline, the hidden smiley face, or some kid's name scrawled on the back. Nothing. Just those 7 words. I glanced at the clock. 10:43 p.m. The house was so still I could hear the faint ticking of the kitchen clock and the refrigerator hum in rhythm with my heartbeat. I told myself it was some weird Halloween prank, maybe something the farm kids slipped into random pumpkins for fun. But still, my hands were cold. I finished carving, dropped a little tea light inside, and lit it. When I turned off the kitchen light, the pumpkin came alive. Its glow moved in slow waves, shadows twitching across the walls. The flame inside flickered like it was breathing, inhaling and exhaling. For a second, I thought it winked at me. I sat there longer than I meant to, just staring, the air thick with that warm, waxy smell. The light looked softer with every minute, like it was growing tired. At 11:59, the wind picked up outside, rattling the window. The curtain lifted slightly, and I saw the reflection of the flame sway. Then, without warning, it went out. The room fell into absolute black. For maybe 5 seconds, there was nothing but silence. Then I heard it. A sound that didn't belong in an empty kitchen. A whisper, faint but clear, curling up from the darkness near the table. It said my name, and it sounded like it came from inside the pumpkin.
I didn't sleep much that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I swore I could still hear it. That whisper, soft and dry, like someone speaking through a handful of ashes. I kept telling myself it was just the wind through the window crack, or maybe the sound of the candle sputtering out. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. I knew what I'd heard. By morning, the pumpkin looked perfectly normal again. The faint smell of smoke hung in the air, and the wax inside had melted into a tiny puddle shaped like an eye. I tried to tell Mom about it over breakfast, but she just smiled without really listening. "Halloween imagination," she said, stirring her coffee. "That's what happens when you stay up past bedtime." When she left for work, I went back to the kitchen and sat in front of the pumpkin again. Its grin looked wider in daylight, the edges of the carved mouth curling upward like it was mocking me. I touched its cool skin and said out loud, "You're not real." For a second, I could have sworn it twitched. That night, I lit the candle again, even though part of me didn't want to. I wanted to prove to myself that it was all in my head. I turned off the kitchen lights, sat on the floor, and watched. The flame was steady at first, small and harmless, the way it should be. But after a few minutes, it started to move. Not flicker, but pulse, like a heartbeat. When I leaned closer, I realized it was reacting to me. Every time I exhaled, the light swelled brighter. Every time I inhaled, it dimmed, like it was breathing with me. Then it spoke again. Not words, not really. More like a sigh that shaped itself into sound. My name, stretched out, whispered in a voice that was almost mine. I jumped back so fast the chair behind me fell over. The candle's flame didn't move. It just kept burning, calm and steady as if nothing had happened. I should have blown it out right then. I almost did, but then I remembered the note. Don't blow out the candle before midnight. I didn't know why that mattered, but some part of me, the quiet, scared part, believed that if I did, something worse would happen. So I sat there, waiting, watching that breathing light. Minutes crawled by. The house creaked and settled around me. At one point, I heard footsteps upstairs, slow and deliberate, but I knew Mom wasn't home yet. When the clock hit 11:58, I whispered, "What do you want?" For a long time, there was nothing, just the faint hiss of wax dripping down the candle's side. Then the light inside flared, bright enough to cast moving shapes across the walls, shapes that looked like hands, small ones. I couldn't breathe. The air grew thick, warm, almost sweet like burnt sugar. The shadows climbed up the walls, reaching for me. And then, as quickly as it had started, the flame died again. But this time, before the dark swallowed everything, I saw the wax, still warm, still liquid, soaking into the letters until they bled red. When I leaned closer, the words had changed. Don't let the light die again.
I couldn't shake the feeling that the note was alive. It sat there on the kitchen counter all day, curling at the edges like it was breathing. I tried to throw it away once, but the moment it hit the trash, the lights in the house flickered. So I took it back out and tucked it under the pumpkin's lid, like putting a bandage over something I didn't want to look at. By afternoon, the sky had turned a heavy gray, the kind that smells like rain before it falls. Mom dropped me off at the school parking lot for the annual fall fair. Caramel apples, hay rides, cheap prizes. It should have been fun, but everything felt off. Maybe it was because I hadn't slept right since the whispering started. Maybe because I couldn't stop thinking about that old man from Willow Lane. The farm stand was set up near the back of the fairgrounds. Same crooked sign, same display of pumpkins, only fewer this time. And there he was, the old man in his dusty overalls and dark cap pulled low. When he saw me, he froze. Not the polite kind of, "Oh, I remember you," but like I'd just stepped out of a nightmare he'd hoped was over. "You bought it," he said, voice rough and quiet. I blinked. "The pumpkin?" "Yeah." He stared past me, toward something I couldn't see. "Shouldn't have taken that one," It wasn't for sale. I tried to laugh it off. "Well, you sold it to me." He didn't laugh. Didn't mean to. Sometimes they find their own way. "They?" I asked, but he just looked at me, and for the first time I noticed his hands, the fingernails stained dark, like he'd been digging in dirt that didn't want to be touched. He leaned forward. His breath smelled like wet leaves and something older, something sour. "Listen to me, girl. When the light goes out, don't be near it. Not this time. Not again." I tried to ask what he meant, but he turned away, pretending to rearrange the pumpkins. His shoulders shook slightly, like he was trembling. Then, in the space of a single blink, he was gone. I don't mean he walked off. I mean gone. The stand was still there, but the old man wasn't. Just the pumpkins, silent and watching. I stood there staring until a fair volunteer asked if I was okay. I said yeah, even though my hands were cold and my mouth tasted like metal. When Mom picked me up, the sky had gone black with storm clouds. I looked out the window the whole way home, watching the rain smear across the glass. And then I saw it, on the corner where the stand had been, a scarecrow. Only it wasn't stuffed with hay. The shape was too real, too heavy. The hat was the same one the old man wore. When lightning flashed, I saw its face. It wasn't made of straw after all. It was a pumpkin.
That night the rain didn't stop. It beat against my window like fingers tapping in a rhythm I couldn't ignore. The whole house smelled like wet wood and candle wax. Mom was asleep again. She'd been so tired lately. But even through her closed door, I could hear her restless shifting, like she was dreaming something she couldn't wake up from. I went to the kitchen around 11. I don't even know why. Maybe I wanted to see if the note still said what it did before. Maybe I just couldn't stand lying in bed with that whisper still threading through my head. The pumpkin was waiting for me. The grin looked wider than ever, and the candle I swore I hadn't lit was already burning inside. Its flame was pale now, not golden but silvery, like moonlight trapped in wax. The note was gone. When I leaned closer, I heard it again. My name. But not just mine this time. There were others, faint voices underneath it, layered like static, whispering from far away. Some sounded like children, soft, frightened, pleading. Others were lower, drawn out like sighs echoing through dirt. I should have run. I should have woken Mom, smashed that thing, something. Instead, I whispered back, "Who are you?" The candle flared. Shadows burst across the walls, shapes of faces, hollow-eyed and open-mouthed, their lips moving but not matching the words. "Let the fire live," they breathed. "Keep it warm. Keep it open." My throat tightened. The air in the kitchen grew hotter, pressing against my skin. I tried stepping back, but the sound followed, growing louder. Then, all at once, the flame went out, snuffed like it had been pinched between invisible fingers. Silence. And then, pain. A sharp, burning sting on my wrist. I yelped and stumbled back, clutching it. When I looked down, I saw a mark forming, a small, perfect circle, red and blistering, like a candle drop that had burned straight into me. The room filled with the smell of scorched pumpkin. I turned on the light, heart hammering. The pumpkin was smoking slightly, a thin wisp curling out from its brin. Inside, the candle was melted down to a stub, its flame long dead. But written on the inside of the pumpkin's lid, carved deep into the flesh, were new words. "The light remembers." And underneath, faint but unmistakable, my name again, carved clean and fresh, like it had just been written.
By morning, the mark on my wrist had turned pale and shiny, like an old burn that shouldn't have healed so fast. It didn't hurt anymore, but every time I looked at it, I swore I saw it pulse, just once, like a heartbeat under skin. Mom noticed it over breakfast. "What happened there?" she asked, pouring coffee. "Burned myself," I said. "Playing with candles again?" I nodded, because lying felt easier than explaining the truth, that the pumpkin was carving my name into itself. That day felt wrong from the start. The air was heavy, like the whole town was holding its breath. Even the sky looked bruised, that strange purple gray you only see before snow, though it was still October. I walked home from school slower than usual, dragging my shoes through piles of leaves that crunched too loudly in the silence. When I got home, Mom wasn't there yet. The house smelled faintly like pumpkin again, sweet and rotting all at once. I froze in the doorway. There were handprints on the kitchen window. Not outside, inside, small ones, child-sized, pressed into the glass like something wet had touched it and then pulled away. I wiped one with my sleeve. The print disappeared, but when I looked at my arm, there was a faint orange smudge. The pumpkin sat in the same place, waiting, its grin wider, deeper, like it had been carved further in the night. I checked the back of it. Nothing. No tools, no knife marks, no signs of anyone touching it. Still, the face was different. Its teeth looked sharper. That night, I couldn't bring myself to light the candle. I thought maybe ignoring it would make it stop. I turned off all the lights, went to bed, and tried to convince myself everything was fine. Around midnight, I woke up to the sound of glass tapping. Click, click, click. I sat up. My window was fogged, but through the blur I could see shapes, faint outlines of faces pressed against the glass, dozens of them, their eyes hollow, mouths open. I couldn't see their bodies, just the heads, glowing faintly like jack-o'-lanterns lit from within. And then the whisper came again, from downstairs this time. I crept to the top of the stairs. The light from the kitchen flickered. The pumpkin was burning, without a candle inside. The flame came from deep within its carved grin, flickering like a living thing. The smoke smelled like melting sugar and wet earth. And on the window behind it, new handprints, so many of them that I couldn't see outside anymore. Tiny, orange, and pulsing. I turned away and screamed for Mom. She came rushing down the hall, hair messy, eyes half asleep. "What's wrong?" she asked. When she looked toward the kitchen, the light was gone. The pumpkin sat cold and still, no fire, no smoke. The window was clean. She looked at me like I dreamed it all. But when she touched my arm, her fingers brushed the mark on my wrist, and she flinched, pulling back fast. "Your skin's hot," she whispered. I looked down. The burn was glowing faintly, just like the faces in the glass. By the next morning, I couldn't take it anymore. Every creak of the floorboard sounded like footsteps. Every flicker of light made me think of the pumpkin's grin. Mom kept saying I was pale and jumpy, that maybe I should skip trick-or-treating this year. I told her I just needed air. So after school, I walked back to Willow Lane. The fairgrounds were gone now, just empty dirt and a few broken signs flapping in the wind. The corner where the pumpkin stand used to be looked different, wrong somehow. The grass there was gray, dead in a perfect circle. And sitting behind that patch was the farmhouse. I swear it hadn't been there before. It was small, sagging, the color of bone under years of dust. A no trespassing sign hung crooked on the fence, letters so faded they looked like scratches. I pushed the gate open anyway. The air smelled heavy, damp wood, mildew, something metallic underneath. Every window was dark except one upstairs, where a faint orange glow pulsed slow and steady, the same rhythm as a heartbeat. Inside, the floor groaned under my shoes. The wallpaper was peeling in long strips, and the smell of rot was stronger. I followed it down a narrow hall until I reached a room filled with pumpkins. Dozens of them. They were slumped on shelves, on tables, on the floor, in all different stages of decay. Some fresh, their carved faces soft and sagging, others completely black inside, like burned-out skulls. The walls were covered in writing, same message over and over, carved deep into the wood. Don't blow out the candle. Don't blow out the candle. Don't blow out the candle. I wanted to leave right then, but something drew me closer. A sound, low and faint, like breathing. It came from the far corner, where a single enormous pumpkin sat on a wooden chair. Its lid was gone. Inside, a candle flickered weakly, barely alive. When I leaned over, I saw that the wax wasn't dripping normally. It was moving upward, climbing the candle, almost like it was fighting to stay lit. The air was thick with heat, and under it I heard something else. Whispering. My name again. But this time it wasn't one voice, it was many, all layered together, rising and falling like wind through dry grass. And then another voice joined them. Rough, old, familiar. It should have let it die, it said. I spun around. In the doorway stood the old man from the stand, or what was left of him. His clothes were soaked with dirt, his skin gray as the dead grass outside. His eyes burned faint orange, like candlelight trapped behind glass. He raised one shaking hand and pointed at the pumpkin in front of me. They want the fire to live, he said. They always do. That's how they come back. Before I could move, the candle inside the pumpkin flared so bright I had to cover my face. The room filled with light, orange, searing, pulsing. And when it faded, the old man was gone. Only the chair remained, empty, except for a note sitting where he'd been standing, written in that same thin, trembling hand. Don't let it find your house again. I didn't remember leaving the farmhouse. 1 minute I was staring at that tiny pumpkin, and the next I was on my bike, pedaling home with dirt on my jeans and the taste of smoke in my mouth. The notebook, though, that I still had. I must have grabbed it without realizing. At home, I locked myself in my room and opened it again. The handwriting inside was shaky, uneven, like whoever wrote it had been in a hurry or afraid. Most pages were water-stained, but a few sentences stood out, scrawled over and over. The light keeps them quiet. Children for the harvest. When the candle dies, they wake. One page looked newer, written in darker ink. They come every autumn. They choose the lonely ones first. My stomach twisted reading that. I tried to tell myself it wasn't about me, but deep down I knew it was. That night, I couldn't help it. I went back to the kitchen. The pumpkin sat where I'd left it, its grin deeper now, almost split down to the base. Inside, a candle was already burning, though I hadn't lit it. The light flickered over the walls, and for the first time I realized the glow wasn't just orange anymore. It shimmered faint blue, like something cold was burning instead of hot. Then the voices started again, but this time they weren't whispering my name. They were telling stories. Small, broken sentences, like echoes through a tunnel. We wanted to go home. She blew it out too soon. The fire took her place. I covered my ears, but the voices pressed closer, spilling out of the pumpkin's mouth like smoke. I could almost see them, faint silhouettes of children, their faces flickering like candlelight. One of them, a girl with long braids and hollow eyes, turned toward me. Her mouth moved, but her voice came from everywhere at once. He kept us in the field. Who? I whispered. She pointed toward the window. Outside, across the yard, I saw a figure standing near the trees. The storm clouds had rolled in again, heavy and low, but I could make out the shape of his hat. The old man, or what was left of him. He was still wearing those overalls, but his body looked wrong, too stiff, too still. When lightning flashed, I saw the truth. His head was gone. In its place was a pumpkin, and through the carved grin, a faint light pulsed like a heartbeat. Halloween came faster than I expected, like time had skipped a few beats. The days leading up to it felt strange, foggy, muffled, like the world was holding its breath. Kids in town hung decorations, plastic skeletons and fake cobwebs, but they all looked wrong to me now. Too clean, too human. Mom was working late, so I was home alone that night. I told her I'd hand out candy, but the truth was I couldn't think about anything except that figure in the trees. Since the storm, I hadn't seen him again, but every night I felt eyes on me from the yard. By sunset, the sky was the color of old bruises. I tried to act normal, lit the porch light, put out the candy bowl, turned on some music. But when I walked past the kitchen, I stopped. The pumpkin was glowing again. No candle inside, no matches nearby, but the grin blazed bright and steady, like it had been waiting for the dark. And then I heard it, footsteps outside, slow, uneven, crunching through leaves. I went to the window. Across the yard, shapes were moving through the fog, dozens of them, small figures, their bodies faintly lit from within, the same flickering orange as the pumpkin. Kids. Their faces were hollow, carved like jack-o'-lanterns, light leaking from their eyes and mouths. They moved closer with that same whispering sound, the one I'd heard inside the house. It was like breath over glass. Then, from the middle of the yard, a deeper voice spoke, low, cracking like dry wood. New fire, new light, the old must feed the new. I stumbled back. The pumpkin's glow flared brighter, spilling across the walls like liquid fire. The notebook on the counter flipped open by itself, pages fluttering until it stopped on one that hadn't been there before. The harvest returns every 13 years. One keeps the flame, or all return to claim it. A wind rushed through the kitchen, knocking down the candy bowl and scattering wrappers across the floor. The window rattled, and I saw them, the children pressing their glowing faces against the glass again, but this time they were smiling. I ran to the pumpkin. The light inside was trembling, straining like something alive was trying to crawl out. The carved grin warped, widening until the shell cracked. I could hear the voices screaming now, not in pain, but in hunger. Light it, feed it, keep us warm." And before I could stop myself, I grabbed a match. My hand shook, but the air felt charged, like the whole house was waiting. The mark on my wrist burned hot again, pulsing in rhythm with the pumpkin's glow. When the match flared, I saw faces all around me, on the walls, the windows, even the ceiling, dozens of them, watching. And when I touched the flame to the candle stub inside, they all whispered together, a sound so soft it felt like breath on my neck. "Welcome, Keeper." Then every light in the house went out. When the lights died, the house didn't go dark. It glowed, a faint, pulsing orange, like the walls were breathing with the pumpkin. I could still see my breath, even though the air burned warm. The voices had quieted, replaced by one, calm, close, almost kind. It sounded like me. "Keep the fire, Emma, just until dawn." I stumbled backward, gripping the counter. "What happens if I don't?" The voice laughed softly, a sound that didn't fit my mouth. "Then we find another flame." I looked down. The mark on my wrist was blazing now, the shape of a candle's wick glowing under the skin. I felt the heat move up my arm, into my chest. Every heartbeat made the pumpkin's light grow stronger. The faces outside pressed closer to the windows, waiting. Children with hollow eyes, their carved smiles stretching wider each time the light flickered. I realized then what they wanted. The flame wasn't the candle anymore. It was me. The air thickened, my vision blurred. I grabbed the notebook, desperate for something, anything, and found a line scrawled across the last page. "The Keeper must burn, or the lost will rise." My hands were shaking so bad I dropped it. The pumpkin's grin split wider, light spilling across the floor. I could feel it pulling at me, tugging something from behind my ribs. I screamed and lunged forward, blowing at the flame with everything I had left. For half a second, nothing happened. Then the glow dimmed, and the voices went silent. The kitchen filled with smoke. The pumpkin cracked open, spilling black wax like blood. And in the sudden quiet, I heard one last whisper, faint and cold. "You shouldn't have done that." Morning came gray and thin, like the sun didn't really want to rise. Smoke still clung to the ceiling, soft as fog. The pumpkin on the table was cold now, split in two, its insides black and slick. The smell of burnt wax hung heavy in the air. Mom found me sitting there, eyes red, voice gone. I tried to tell her what happened, but nothing came out, just a rasp. She looked at the mess, sighed, and said something about Halloween nerves. She cleaned up, threw the pumpkin pieces into a trash bag, and took it outside. But that night I saw her standing by the porch light, staring at the bag. She said it was twitching. After that, things got strange, in quiet ways. The kitchen lights flickered sometimes when I walked by. The mirrors fogged up on their own, even when it wasn't cold. And in the middle of the night, I'd wake to the smell of candle smoke, faint and sweet. The mark on my wrist faded, mostly. Some nights it still glows faintly, like an ember under the skin. 2 weeks later, the trash collectors refused to take the bag, said it was too heavy, too wet. Mom dragged it to the edge of the woods and left it there. The next morning, it was gone. On my way to school a few days after, I passed the old farm road. The fog was thick, curling low around the ground. That's when I saw it. A small patch of earth, freshly turned, and sitting right in the middle of it, a single pumpkin. It was pale orange, almost candle-colored, and carved into its skin in those same thin, trembling letters were 7 words. Don't blow out the candle before midnight. I just stood there, watching the fog roll over it, until the wind changed and I caught the faintest smell of smoke, wax and earth, the same as before,